Hello and welcome to another video with Cloud Solutions Tech. In this video, I'll guide you through setting up a complete CI/CD pipeline using various AWS services. We'll start by fetching the code from GitHub and then push to AWS CodeCommit, and then from there, I'll set up AWS CodeBuild to build the code, store it in our S3 bucket, and then use AWS CodeDeploy to deploy it into EC2 instance. We'll automate the entire process with CodePipeline. So whether you are new to DevOps or looking to deepen your AWS skills, this tutorial is perfect for you. Also, if you find this video useful, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support our channel. Thank you. So let's start by fetching the code we'll be working on today. So the code is already in my GitHub repository, which I will share the link at the end of the video. So you need to have your terminal ready to be able to clone the repository. So in the repository, I've put up a README that will guide through the step-by-step of this project. So you can go ahead and clone this repository. Just copy, follow the instructions that I have put up right here for the project. So by cloning this repository, this command will pull the application code to your local machine, which you then push to AWS CodeCommit. So this step ensures that we have the exact code locally that we want to deploy through our CI/CD pipeline. So for me, I have already cloned this repository. So just follow the link right here. This is the link to my repository. I'll also make it available at the end of the video. So I have my repo right here. Alright, so I have all my files right here. So go ahead and clone the repository. So once you are done with cloning the repository, the next thing that we need to do, we need to go ahead and set up our AWS CodeCommit. So let's go ahead and create our CodeCommit, which will serve as our code repository. So to create a CodeCommit, let's go into our AWS account. So in AWS CodeCommit, I'll just come here and create a new one. Let's create. Before I continue with the CodeCommit, let's quickly go ahead and create an IAM user that we will use for this project. At this point, you need to download the CSV file for the user they have created. So we use download. Alright. So now that we have created the user developer, so let's go in there with the security credentials. So right here, HTTPS git credential, click on generate. So you can also download the credentials as well. After downloading your Git credentials, close. Alright, so you should have this, it should be showing active. Alright, that's good. So once this step is done, we need to attach a policy to this user, which is called the AWS CodeCommit power user. So we go to permissions, go to add permissions, attach policy directly, and then we'll search for that permission. I'll use this one right here. Select this one, do next, add. Right, so we have our permission right here. So we're done with this part. So now that we have our IAM user ready, the next thing is for us to push the code to CodeCommit. So we need to clone the CodeCommit URL and then go to our terminal and run the command. So when it asks for the username and password, you are going to enter the username and password of your CodeCommit credential that you generated. After our CodeCommit, to go and copy the URL. So we have it right there. So this is for HTTPS and this is for SSH. So at this point, we can go ahead and copy our repository. We have our terminal ready. So as you can see, it says we have cloned an empty repository. So let's seed into the repo. So now we are inside of this project now, CI/CD project. So at this point, we already have our code repository ready. We're going to CodeCommit to create the repository. Next, we created IAM user. We granted the user a permission, the AWS CodeCommit power user, and then we also generated the HTTPS Git credentials, and then we make sure that we download. So we have our repository ready, and then with that, we have already cloned our GitHub repo into our AWS CodeCommit. So at this point now, we are ready to push our code from our local machine to AWS CodeCommit repository. So the next thing is to push our code to CodeCommit. So I'll go ahead and run git add to add all the files, and then run git commit. And so git push. So with the git push, this will upload all the local files to CodeCommit. So now our code is securely stored inside of our AWS CodeCommit and then ready for build process. Let us go refresh. Alright, you can see. Alright, so since we have our code now in our CodeCommit, so the next thing for us to do now is to set up our AWS CodeBuild, which will compile and package the application. So let's go to CodeBuild. So within CodeBuild, we are going to create a new project. So the project name, let's call it CI/CD project. That's the name of our project. So right here, source, we're going to select CodeCommit and then repository. This is our repository that we're using for this project. We select this repository, and then we need to select the branch. So which branch are we using at the moment? We are using the master branch. So in this session, environment, we leave it the way it is. The operating system, we are using Ubuntu. So select Ubuntu here. The runtime, leave it as standard. And then also the image, leave the image. We're not changing anything. Image version, leave it just the way it is. For the build spec, so right there it says insert build command, use a build spec file. So in our case, we already have our build spec file. Remember, we uploaded them. So our build spec file is already here. So we don't need that. So we don't need to insert. We'll just use this. So check this point. So right here, build spec name is optional. You don't need to put that part. So just leave it the way it is. So once you check, make sure all your settings, everything is what you're supposed to do. So then you can now go ahead and click on create build project. Okay, here I didn't put the role name. So let's add a role name. So say CodeBuild. Let's go ahead and create our project. So now that we have our CodeBuild ready, CodeBuild is now set to automate the build process every time new code is pushed to the repository. So let's go ahead here and say start build. Then let me come here, paste details so we can see how the build is going. I'll pause the video and then I'll come back when the build process is complete. Okay, as you can see, our build process is complete, and you can see right there, if you want to look at the logs, you have the logs right here. So now that we have set up our code build, we're able to build. It works perfect. Create an S3 bucket to store the artifact that is generated by the code build. So before in the settings we didn't add that, so let's go ahead and create S3 bucket that we're going to use for that. So come to S3 console. We created our bucket. Make sure your bucket has a unique name. I'll leave it with a setting, enable versioning. So now that we have our bucket, we are going to go back to our code build and then go and edit so we can add the artifact. Alright, so this is our code build. Edit. Right, artifact. So right here in the artifact, bucket name, the name, I'll call it build. So with this artifact that I've updated, so for the artifact here, we are going to choose zip. So we are using a zip file. So right, so let's save, update project. So after updating our project, let's run the build again. I'll pause the video. Alright, so our build succeeded again. You can see the status right there. So now after the build is complete now, our code should be stored in the S3 bucket as a zipped artifact ready to be deployed. So let's go to our S3 and check. We created this guy right here. Alright, so we can see right there, build artifact. So the next thing for us now is to set up the CodeDeploy to manage the deployment of our application to the EC2 that we're going to be using. Alright, so let's navigate to CodeDeploy. Right here, so our CodeDeploy. Let's create. And right here for the compute platform, we choose EC2/on-premises. Alright. So with this setup now, the time has come for us to set up our EC2 instance. So we need to launch an EC2 instance where our application will be deployed. So for this, I'll be going with Ubuntu. I need to quickly set up a role that this instance is going to be using, and then we are going to attach the necessary role for CodeDeploy. So let me do that right in, go to roles, create roles. I'm going to be able to EC2. So we have all our roles here. Let's give our role a name. Let's create our role now. Alright, successful. So let's go ahead and attach that role. Alright, so let's get into this EC2 instance. Yes, with the two into yes. So now that we're able to SSH into the environment, we need to configure some required applications. So this will include installing the necessary software and ensuring that the instance is ready to receive the deployment. So for CodeDeploy to work, we need to install the CodeDeploy agent on our EC2 instance. So let's create a file for agent.sh. So I have the script already in my GitHub. So this is the script that we're going to use. So just copy and paste this script. So once you paste the script, go ahead and save. So let's run the script. Alright, as you can see right there, CodeDeploy agent service. We have been able to install it. So now look at it, says active and running. So that's good. So now we'll go back into our AWS account and then create a deployment group and then deploy the application. So for that, we'll go back into the CodeDeploy and then create a deployment group. So let's create our deployment group. So right there, we need to enter a name for the deployment group. Service role, we use this, and then right there, deployment type, we have blue green, we have in place. Another time I'll take my time to explain what blue green is, but for now we are going with in place. And in the environment configuration, we are going with EC2 instance. So install AWS CodeDeploy agent, you say never, and then deployment settings, you leave it at default like that. And then right here, enable load balancer, uncheck it. We don't need load balancer for this project. Let's create our deployment group. Next step is to click on create deployment. So under create deployment, right here, I'm going with S3. My application is stored inside of S3, so that is where we store. Remember, we create an S3 bucket the other time. Right in, this is our S3 URL, so this is what we need. In the file type, zip. So once you finish putting all the information to create deployments, click on create deployment. As you can see, deployment has started. Installing application on your instances. So the deployment has started. The deployment was successful. So you can see our application name, deployment configuration, we have the ID, and this is our deployment group. So now it's successful. We just open our EC2 instance here. So we copy the public IP of our EC2 instance and paste it on the browser. Now we should have our application. So let's copy the public IP of the EC2 instance. So there you go. Welcome to AWS DevOps Hands-on Lab with CST Cloud Solutions Tech. Please subscribe to my channel, like and share the content to support more valuable tutorials and insights. So now that we have successfully created our project, how can we set up this through automation? So setting up the code pipeline to automate the whole process for us instead of doing after everything one after the other the way we went through it. So to streamline this entire process, let's set up AWS CodePipeline, which will automate the CI/CD process. So we have CodePipeline right here. Create pipeline. And then for the execution code, we go with version 2, which is the required version. And then for the service role, so you can go with creating new service role, or if you have an existing role, you can go with an existing role. I do have an existing role that I can use, but for purpose of this video, I'll just go with create a new service role. Click on next. So for the source, our source is going to be CodeCommit, and then the repository name, pick our repository name, and then the branch is master branch, and then chain detection option, we use AWS CodePipeline, and then for the output artifact, we go with this default CodePipeline default. Next. So for the build, we are not building from Jenkins, we are building from AWS CodeBuild. Select the region, project name, and then for the input artifacts, you leave it as a source artifact, you leave it that way. And then for the build type, you use a single build. So you do next. So the next part is the deployment. So for the deployment, we are using CodeDeploy, and then the name of our application, that's a CI/CD project, and then the deployment group, which is right here. So I'm done with that part. So we'll do next, review, and then we'll say create pipeline. So creating the pipeline that started. So this might take a while, you just have to be patient. So I'll pause the video once the pipeline is finished, then I'll come back. So as you can see right here, the source succeeded. So the next thing now, the build is in progress. After the build is done, then it will deploy. Alright, so I'll pause the video. Once everything is complete, I'll join you back. You can see the build also succeeded. So now the deployment is in progress. So the deploy has also started. You can see right there in progress. So let's wait for it to complete as well. So as you can see, the deployment is also done, succeeded as well. So you can open it to check the details, summary, that's the input, same thing as the build as well. The build, if you need to check out the logs, here this is the logs, and the same thing for the deployment as well. We have the summary right there, we have the input. Alright, and there you have it. So we have successfully set up a complete CI/CD pipeline using AWS services. So I started by fetching the code from GitHub, push it to CodeCommit, build it using CodeBuild, and then store the artifacts in S3, and then deploy them to EC2 with CodeDeploy. And then finally, I automated everything with CodePipeline. So I hope you found this tutorial very helpful and that it gives you a solid foundation in AWS DevOps practice. So if you have any questions or run into any issues while trying it yourself, feel free to leave a comment below. I'll do my best to help you out. If you have enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your network, and subscribe to the channel for more AWS DevOps tutorials. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.